So today I'm talking to Taylyn, and she sent me a few questions that she has, and I was really excited to get your email because they're great questions and things that I was like, oh, I definitely understand where you're coming from. So, you have a full-time job and you work as an art director,
I
and you
do.
love this job, and so you're not in a position where you actually want to quit the job that you have right now. You just want to work on this other passion project. And I think that's fine because you hear so many different conversations about people that are saying that they want to quit their day job. But a day job is not a bad thing. I mean, that's where you get to build up all of your experience with somebody else's money, right? And
Yes.
I
And
can
not
tell you,
pressure.
yeah, a lot less pressure. And I can tell you firsthand that having your own business and being an entrepreneur is not easy. And there is a lot of like mental stuff that goes into it about feeling if you're doing a good job. And when you add money stressors to that, it's huge. I mean, it can
Hmm.
really crush your creativity and your ideas and everything that you have. So, wanting to stay in your full time business is not crazy, and it's totally doable. So, one of the questions that you had was as you're building your second business and you're working with people, do you tell them that you have a full time job?
Hmm.
And I thought that you probably would think that that would mean that you weren't as legitimate, or that they may think that your fears may be that they wouldn't think that you could work with them in a way that they could, like you could take care of them. But I don't
Hmm.
think that's true because I think that a lot of the people that you're working with, I mean, they have a full time job too. So they have
Hmm.
different hours. And I think it really comes down to being upfront with that person and saying, this is how I communicate, and this is when I'm going to communicate with you. So
Yep.
something like, you can reach me anytime during the day via email, but my like office hours or those types of conversations can only happen
Hmm.
between this time and this time.
Yeah.
I actually have a friend who has an interior design business, and she wants to spend time with her kids, and so she only works until 2 or 3 o'clock during the day, and she doesn't work on weekends. And if clients want to talk to her, meet with her on the weekends, they have to pay a fee.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
like that.
So, I mean, she's really clear with her boundaries, which is
Yeah.
a good thing too, and something that you'll come across more and more. But I don't think that I don't think that it takes away from people being able to trust you when you just say, like, these are the hours that I have.
Yeah. And I
Um,
I think that because I'm coming from a place where I want to be super transparent and I want to make the connection with them. And if I don't tell them about this part of my life, like I'm not being true. I'm not being who we really are, my husband and I.
right.
And I kept coming back to this. Well, I want to tell them I'm trying to figure out a way to make them feel comfortable, make them feel like the reason we're doing this is because we're passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we're working with them, they are our passion project. Like
Right.
that to me is almost so much more than if we had a million clients and we're just going through. Like we are focusing on them and we are choosing to spend this time on these projects because we love them so much. So I love hearing you say that, and I think that you mentioned that some of the clients will also have other
Mm-hmm.
jobs, and I think that that's big too because our ideal clients are families and groups of friends that want to start this business together, and I feel like normally those projects come out of either them not being happy in their current jobs or something where they're like, oh, we really want to try this, let's do it. And that is usually on the side at first. So
Right.
I feel like they hopefully will connect. And if they don't, then maybe they won't be the people we would want to work with anyways. So
That's right, and that's a good thing to keep in mind. And I think that you need to concentrate on your passion for these people as your source of confidence, because
mhm.
when you're talking about, this is how we do things and this is when we talk and stuff like that, a lot of that is confidence, because when you think about how you deliver it, if you're like, well, I don't want you to think that we're not here for you, but we're only here for, that's different than
Yeah.
saying, hey, we're so glad we're working with you, this is the time that we
Hmm.
can talk. And it's a delivery of it,
Yeah.
so I don't think that that's something that you should worry about. And then another question you had was about social media and being able to put yourself out there. I mean,
Yes.
you are not alone. I have
It is
totally.
the most stressful thing. Like literally this whole process. I know there's all this business stuff, but social media is the thing that stresses me out the
Yeah.
most. Like, beyond anything else. And that's crazy to me because as a millennial and as of like the person in this generation that's supposed to be the ones knowing it all, I don't. And you read all the blogs and you watch all the people doing it, and I'm not that person. Like, I'm not. And so I'm trying to like figure out how to not fake it and be true to who I am, but also like do something that's good for the business. And it's a struggle balance for sure.
I get that because it's been really hard for me, and I mean, the more people you talk to, you're not the only one. So I feel like I've actually found an answer to that. So I really only started Instagramming about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I could not find a way to do it that made me feel comfortable. Like, yeah, I couldn't find a way to be comfortable because it's hard to really talk about and be out there if you aren't really sure what it is that you're going to say. So
Yeah.
I think there are lots of parts in it. Part of it is defining your boundaries about what you feel comfortable talking about and what you don't feel comfortable talking about. And then another part of it is if you're not the kind of person that's like, look what I had for lunch today and look at me do this. And, if you're not that kind of person, then you have to go back and have a strategy. So originally Instagram was more of a like in the moment kind of thing, but that's not really true. It doesn't.
No.
I mean,
they want you to feel that it's in the moment,
they
but
want you to feel that way. Yeah,
a month and a half.
It's definitely not. So maybe you're more like me and you need to go back and just have a very like business oriented a strategy for that. So I'll just kind of tell you what mine is as a way to sort of explain what I'm talking about. So and I have a separate Instagram that's just my personal, and I have some pictures of my kids up and stuff like that, but I don't really do that much with it, to be honest. I put my focus on my business account, and I decided that it was just about work. I mean, I'll talk about some personal life things, but I don't post pictures of my kids there. Just in a very strategic way. The color palette is like my branding color, so I went back to my branding about the color palette, and when I decided about what I was going to talk about, I really want to share what I know with people about branding and design and building a business. That is the place where I can be very open. Like, there's not a failure I won't talk about. Like, I don't care at all. Like, that's a place where it feels good because it's something that I really want to share. Like, I love, my favorite thing that I do in my whole business are these calls, and I love it. And I'm not going to tell you like, oh, being an entrepreneur is so easy. Like, look how awesome I am or whatever. But I will tell you like things that work and things that don't work. And I've definitely figured that out on my own, like trial and error and stuff like that. So that's a place where I feel like I can be vulnerable and be completely okay with it. I hate having my picture taken, and I know that it's good to post a picture up so people know what you look like, but I don't like doing that. So I don't do it very often, and I'm totally okay with that. So my strategy revolves all around what I want to share, which is all business related stuff. And I have that content laid out in my blog post on my website, and so it kind of sets up a framework where it's easy for me to talk about it. So I know that every other day I do a post about something that's on my blog. Okay. And then usually the picture posts that's in between those are related to that, or just it's goes back to business topics, but it's just stuff like conversations that I've had or networking things that I've been to, and it's just kind of like one big conversation. And that makes it easy for me because I don't have to think about what I'm going to talk about. I have a plan, so I know what I'm going to post. I have all of my images are accessible from another hard drive from my phone, so it's like in the cloud. But they're all clouded, and so I just do it. And I actually have a timer on my phone that goes off to remind me that it's time to do it every day.
That's awesome. That's really smart.
So the other social media, I'd use Hootsuite, and I pre-plan and have them post automatically, so I don't have to do it. I don't have to really think about it every day. But Instagram, I don't have pre-planned content, except that it revolves around my blog posts. So every other day, but I don't really think about what I'm going to say. I mean, I could, but my timer goes off and I do my post and then I'm done. And if I'm busy and I don't do my post, then I don't, it's not a big deal. So that's the way that I like to do it. So when I do social media for other people, it's all pre-planned and I do it all in Hootsuite. But for myself, I like just kind of being spontaneous with Instagram because I need to get on anyway and be social. So
engage.
So like I'll look and see what other people are doing and I'll check in with my friends, and I have a couple of Instagram pods where we support each other with some different groups that I'm in, and so I'll go in and do all of that kind of stuff at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just kind of having a strategy behind it and setting it up where it's part of my routine has been a really big difference for me, because I struggled too. I was like, I couldn't figure out how to do it because it didn't fit right. Like it didn't feel right. And you can't make yourself. You just can't make yourself. It's kind of like when you go to a networking event, you can kind of make yourself go in the room and walk up to somebody and talk. But like doing that every day, it just wears you down, and you just can't.
While you're in your pajamas and you feel like, oh my gosh, like this is my life. And I think that's where I'm figuring out my voice, like how I want to be perceived, and what we want for this business is so much about connecting with people that I think one of the biggest things is like having it so that they feel like they're connecting with us. And a lot of what I want to share, because I haven't built a business yet, like I'm doing it, so I'm going to share that along the way. But a lot of it too is like sharing the experiences that we have. Like one of the reasons we focus so much, or we've picked restaurant and retail, is because we feel like so much experience comes out of those instances. And some past life or some of our history is based in those. And I want to be able to share those. And that's what I'm trying to figure out, is how to share them and not be like a million paragraphs, how to share them and it be a quick response where they get it right away. And that's just a personal thing. I'm wordy and I just speak with a lot of random words, and it's a problem anyways. But when you're trying to do it on social media, it's like a big hurdle for me to just very simply explain what I'm trying to say and then them get it quickly and not be annoyed with how much they're reading.
So I think about it like it's one big story. So if you kind of outline what is the story that you want to tell? If you're trying to explain why you are passionate about the industry, you could talk about why you want to do this. You could talk about how you're doing it. And you could highlight your customers that you have. Yeah. So that can be kind of the overall story that you tell. And as far as being wordy, I mean, a lot of people like that. And there are a lot of people that have a bazillion followers and they're known for having these really long posts. So I don't think you should worry about that. If you feel like it's too much, just vary it. Yeah. And there may be some days where there's not a huge story to tell, but it's more about the image than the story. And maybe some days it's more about the story than the image. Because you won't always have like these great images, but you can decide like what your overall look and feel and tone is going to be. And you can have some images that are real time and then also add in some stock images. I would suggest finding somebody that is really, that has a lot of images that's really similar to your style so that you can mix and match those. That's a good way to be able to, populate all of that stuff for you. There's actually a word for it. It's a marketing strategy, and I cannot remember what it's called, but the idea is that as you build up an idea or a business, that you bring people along with you. Here in Knoxville, there's a donut restaurant. It's called Maker's Donuts, and they have these like, I don't know, unbelievable, delicious.
So I love
donuts.
Yeah. That's literally part of my life. So
they're like crazy donuts, and their whole entire strategy of building their business was just that they got online and were like, "Hey, we have an idea for this donut restaurant. Does anybody think this is a good idea?" And as they formed the idea and found the location and did the design, they were just completely open about it, and that was it. That's all they did.
That was them. Yeah. I love that because I I think too, a lot of the labor of love that has gone into this has literally been based on my husband and our morning coffee conversations. Mm-hmm. And it literally is like talking about it every day and me thinking about it for like most of my life. And I feel like a lot of those conversations bring in ideas for other businesses, or we have all these business ideas, but also then we go to into conversations about businesses we like and things that could be improved. And we're talking about all these things. And I think a lot of that could be shared. So that's really interesting that you say that, because kind of bringing them along. We don't know what we're doing. Yeah. Like I have a corporate job. I'm a creative director. I have a lot of responsibility, but when you do it for yourself, it's very different. So it is different. I think bringing people, like there might be people that really appreciate that and can kind of relate, because it is a definite learning process.
I mean, you could make that a thing, like you could do one every week that's just like morning coffee. And mm-hmm. of course you can have pictures of coffee. That's going to be easy. You can have lots of coffee pictures and just talk about those conversations of how you're building this and your ideas and things like that. Mm-hmm. What else was I going to say? Oh, okay. So your other question was about you and your husband are going to do this business together, and you had some questions around that, which was really interesting because so my husband is a restaurant person. We've owned restaurants. He has opened restaurants for other people, and right now he's a restaurant consultant.
Okay.
So, he's a business person. It's not because he just really loves food. He's not like a chef that does this, but he's a business and he's a people person. And so we had this idea to start a company, and we have it, but it's kind of in the really early stages. It's called the Maker's Hive. And so it's all about giving business advice to people who are specifically makers, but it's like real business advice of how to start a business and all these kind of things. And so we've actually been kind of navigating that situation too. Mm-hmm. And with you being the creative person and like I'm the creative person, a lot of it falls on you as far as the visual stuff, the branding, the actual doing those parts of it. But I think that if you look at your husband's strengths, whatever those may be, that it's kind of like those are some of the initial things, but when you actually get into running the business, that you can look and see where they can be a really good partner for you. Like there'll be so many networking things. I mean, you have to network, and that is a really good place where you can split up some responsibility where you're not the one that's doing it all the time. Mm-hmm. His work overlaps with mine because he is out and meeting people and people that are starting new restaurants and they need branding, and so then I can come in and do that. So we have a lot of overlap, which is nice. But with you guys working in the same, on the same projects, that's a way that you can really cut some of that would be for him to do a lot of the networking stuff. And then you didn't go into much about what's your husband's background?
So he's in finance, and finance and business, lots of numbers. He does work for a marketing company doing their finance. So I think he's more and more understanding it, but still very numbers based. So business side of things, that's super helpful because he can talk to me about these things that I don't even know what they're called. Spreadsheets, I don't get it, but he does. So that's great. But, and with this specific company idea, he's like the super realistic, rational person, and I am the like super detailed, like all these lofty ideas. And I've explained it to people before, like when we're foodies, like we love going out to eat for many reasons, but we just love it. And it's been such a part of our life. We've been together since I was 15. So like we've had all these experiences kind of centered around food, and we go into a new place and I am like oohing and ahhing over the menu design and over the lights hanging in there. And he's like scouring the menu for like the biggest dish and like the cheesiest dish he can find. And I'm like, well, wait, look at this text. He's like, we're eating. Like we have these two sides of things. And when we go into businesses and we do these audits, we call them, and we kind of go through and we are the customer. So like we're then giving the owner the experience of their customers, and some downfalls or some places they might be missing something. He is like very, hey, this person needs to eat or they need to buy something. This is what they're experiencing. And I'm like, oh, but look, you have this pretty corner. Like, why don't we add a sign there that really communicates who your brand is? And so we've found these little niches that we each can offer. And that's what's super exciting for us, because we think it's there. It's just the formation of the business and all these tasks you have to do. Like we talk about social media. He's the same way I was. We have social media, but we're not posters. Like I have a personal Instagram. He doesn't even have Instagram. So I'm like, hey, read this blog about Instagram. We need to know this stuff. Or like, hey, read this. So I'm constantly figuring out ways to like bring him into that fold so that I feel like I'm not carrying the weight until we actually get going. Once we do, I think he'll be very much involved. But it's just that interim. I'm like, well, what else can we have you do so that I can keep doing this other stuff?
Cold emails.
Yeah.
Emails.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Any of those more, so your husband sounds a lot like mine. And
Yeah.
I mean, he is like great at completing tasks. So I can give him very, stuff that I don't want to do, like emailing and things like that. And he's just like all over it, knocks it out. So that would be
that's
something.
a great idea.
I mean, maybe what you're talking about is like a different kind of service where, I mean, it sounds like that's one of your services that you can come in and do an audit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also like the branding stuff. And then his behind the scenes part of the business would be the financing and maybe just some of the other like office task type of things.
Yeah.
But your restaurant conversation struck me because I could see that as being another thing that you put on your Instagram, are these different restaurants that you go to, because that really shows that your passion. So that plays into your brand.
Yeah.
If your brand is that you have a passion for this industry and that's why you want to work with these people, then that shows your passion.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be the coffee chats, the restaurants that you're visiting, and then, maybe you start off with that and like one other thing, and then it's then your work of actually building into the business.
Yeah, I love that. And so you mentioned blogging at one point. I don't think I specifically asked about this, but I am so daunted. Like that, the idea of that is truly terrifying. And I do actually like expressing ideas, and I love talking about stuff. And being in the creative field, like you're constantly talking about your work and you're constantly justifying it and making sense of everything. So I have the ideas, but putting it into words that I think people might actually read is a very different thing. And I think I keep getting faced with, I'm sure many business owners, but like not as far as self-doubt. Like I know I can do it, but I'm like, well, why would anybody want to read that? Like, I think it's cool, and I would like to read if someone wrote that, but like, would anybody else? And I think that that's probably a hurdle you just personally have to get over. But it's like starting that's hard. Like, did you have trouble starting to blog and like starting to really get that content out there?
I mean, I blogged in different ways before I did this. Once I was 100, okay, so I guess about a year ago, I realized that these kind of conversations and the workshops that I taught, like that was the thing that I enjoyed the most. So, and then I also had a digital product that I was working on. Like I've got a course that I'm going to be launching, and it all made sense. So really, it was kind of a repositioning for me that was like identifying where my passion was, and then repositioning my business to support that. So instead of just saying like I do print and web design, well, I do graphic design, but it's more than that. I do branding because I like the process of working with somebody one-on-one. I like the whole process, not just one off this or one off that. So, so the answer, I think, is when you find something that you're passionate about, like you just have to enjoy it. You can't make yourself like. There several years ago, when all the like DIY home blogs were really popular, I was redoing my house, and so I thought, well, I should do that. And it was awful. Like I hated it. I mean, I had some success with it, but I didn't like it. I
Yeah.
didn't like it at all. It was just trying to make something fit that just didn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the biggest part is to find what fits and's natural to you. And as far as like writing style and voice, it's more important to be unique than it is to be perfect.
Yeah.
And think about this too, that the people that you're going to work with, your business is going to be kind of like mine, where you don't want to be a person that just does like a $200 logo.
Yeah.
You want to come in, you want to see them, you want to
Mm-hmm.
like get into their business with them. So all of these blog posts and things, if you're worried about your voice, it just needs to be authentic to you, because if you wrote and sounded like an English professor and then they
Yeah.
meet you, I mean,
They
it's
met
a big
me.
it's a big shift, right? Because you
Yeah.
want people that want to hire you for you, and not that want to hire like a stuffy English professor.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I
I
love
think you just
that.
have to do it. I think you just have
I
to
know.
decide you're going to do it and just like
I
stick with
know.
it. But it's all the same thing. It's your brand. It's
Mm-hmm.
what you really want people to know and how you want people to feel. Like I always kind of think about, what would you want people to say about you behind your back?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I love
and
that.
then you outline the content that you're going to share that's going to support that brand and how people are going to view you.
I love that. I'm writing some notes. No, I love that. And I know it. And I think that that's why I've been looking forward to this call so much, because when you talk about something so much to yourself
Mm-hmm.
and to your husband and my mom and a few people, that it doesn't feel as real. And even though I know I have to blog, I know it. But having someone tell me that, and there's proof of it, and I can't back down. I feel like that's almost what I've needed and wanted, is like, I know I literally feel like I've read all of the blogs on the face of this earth about businesses, and it's just doing it and making it feel right, and making that connection. So
I mean, here's the thing, like, you don't have to blog. You don't have to. But I think that when you have a business that's going to be more personal and it's just you,
Mm-hmm.
and if those are the kind of clients that you want to attract, then it is a great way for you to market yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a slow drip, too.
Yeah.
It's not like, I know a lot of times they kind of make it seem like, oh, you just put this content out there and people are like, oh, you're great, and let me flock to you. I mean, it's not really. It is a slow process, but I think that if you sat down and you write out a strategy, like, this is what I'm looking at for the next year. I'm going to write about this, this, and this, and it's all about how I'm building this business and my passion for restaurants and the restaurants that I go to and I love, or talk about the menu that you're obsessed with, because, I mean, I get that because I love type, but but there are other people that are going to really appreciate that. And I think especially in certain areas, I mean, having a trendy, like a well-designed restaurant is important. I think a lot of people see the importance of that.
Yeah. So I'm in Charlotte, and we are new here. We moved from DC. So we came from this like super trendy, all these little amazing restaurants in DC, and we didn't know what to expect when we came to Charlotte, and it's like blowing us like away. There's so much here. There's so many great restaurants already, but what we're finding is that there's a lot of these smaller restaurants that's been around for a while, most often family owned, or like small groups, and they're just kind of being left. They have a great product and great offerings, but like they're just being left behind by all these like amazing designed and like this whole experience places, and that's the void we want to fill. One huge factor in my life is that my family owns a restaurant, and I grew up in a little restaurant outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it literally, it was such a huge part of my life, impacted everything, just the whole business side of things, but also the experience and service and all that stuff. And to this day, they don't accept credit cards. Like, they are their own thing. They are like their own brand. They're super little. And it's one of those things where I'm actually working on updating their branding right now, because of course, but it's just one of those things that I think with these little updates, it's going to give them a whole new light. And I know that there are other businesses out there that would benefit with that. So
Well,
finding that.
I mean, that's your first story. That's a really great story to share. A restaurant. I mean, I love things that have a history to them. You know, I love
Yeah.
that. And I love the story behind it. Like, if you know, the story, the people that owned it, like the Maker's Donuts people, like, they
Yeah.
just were like, yeah, let's make donuts.
Yeah. It's like what, and knowing how hard it is, and like that is your livelihood. And I know just firsthand that like the restaurant closed the day of my wedding so that my family could go.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a real thing. And so there are a lot of people that have that or make that connection, or if they're experiencing it in their own life that, hey, I can't go to my son's thing, or we're moving stuff around to have this business. I think is like incredible. And why not help them a little bit and make it a little better?
Well, what if you wrote down like 10 topics of kind of, I mean, I'm thinking story because that would be the tone of the post, but like blog post, or, you know, and then Instagram and all of that kind of stuff. That's just like a series that completes one big story about your family, like stories about what it was like when you were little and things that you remember. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a huge amount of people that have never worked in a restaurant and don't know that it's like a 24/7 kind of thing that is really not
I love that.
not so great for family life.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard.
And
It's a
real.
lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Which is why my husband's consulting right now and kind of thinking about other things that he could do, because it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
But you have a unique perspective, and you have, you know, a family-owned restaurant that's so nice and more unique now, I think, with the way that, you know, most things are corporations and stuff like that, or there's smaller restaurants that are looking to join a corporation and get bought out, or things like that. So you have a unique story, and I think that would follow along really well with, so you have your history that's part of your overall story, right? So the passion, the coffee talks, the history, the going to the restaurants, it all makes up one big brand, which explains your love of what you want to do, your why. Your why. It's all about your why.
Yeah. There are a lot of parts of the why that have over the last few years always been a factor, but I'm only now realizing like that they all connect, and that this reason, me wanting to do this and wanting to focus in restaurant and retail for so long, is like, there's a reason for it. So now it's like, okay, well, I need to just do it. If I've been thinking about it this long and it feels like it fits our lifestyle, why not? And we've talked, the first part was about me not necessarily wanting to leave my corporate job. And it's one of those things where they've treated me so well. I've learned so much. It's like amazing experience. It's a huge part of my life, but it may not be forever.
Right.
And we don't have kids yet, but we want them at some point. And I feel like with design, you have the ability to have a career from home. So my idea for this is, I'm not rushing to leave my corporate job right now, but why not build something that I'm proud of and have something in place that if I ever want to leave this job, maybe when we have kids or something changes, you never know in the corporate world what happens. Like, why not try to get something going while there's little pressure on it? So I think that's a little bit of it's a blessing, but also a hurdle, because while I'm not rushing to like make this huge business a success, it's also like I find myself not doing things when I want to, because I'm like, oh, well, there's no rush, but I really want to do it. So not having the pressure of starting it right away is also holding me back, just personally. Like, I'm not progressing as quickly, or I'm not doing things as quickly. So that's also the balance, is like making it happen, but not putting pressure on it. I guess procrastination is a major factor, but
so why don't you do this? Why don't you just change your mindset that this is a real business, and break it down into quarter, 1 through 4, and have a big goal for each quarter, and then action steps for each month.
I love that.
Because then you're doing all the things that you would need to do, or all the things that you do need to do to make your business grow, but you can do it at a slower rate and do it without the pressure, like you said, but still you need, like, you don't have finance as a form of accountability like
Yeah.
you would if you just like had no job right now.
Exactly.
But you need that some form of accountability to make you continue to do all the stuff you need to do.
And keep the momentum, because I feel like it's all there. Like and again, like we are so passionate and we want it so badly that it's there. It's just me doing it, us doing it. But yeah, I love that. I love accountability.
So maybe your first quarter, it's all about branding and it's getting your messaging down and deciding what you're going to write about on social media and actually writing out a complete strategy of what you're going to do. And then, maybe the next month is when you actually go in and you start to implement that and you get used to being, on a schedule with those things.
Yeah.
Because a huge part of running your own business is developing your own strategies and processes.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that saves you big time as you start to get busy and especially if you're going to do both. So you can just kind of do that at a slower rate where you're learning how, because a lot of the first year is really learning about what works and what doesn't work. Like, I didn't quit my job and then the next day I was like, okay, I'm going to use Hootsuite and then I'm going to do this on Mondays and this on Tuesdays. I mean, it took a lot of time for me to get into a routine of that. So think about how nice it is that you have all this time to figure out all of that kind of stuff before you actually start getting really busy.
Yeah.
So you can have a goal for each quarter and then, a little goal for each month as you're building up all these things that you know that you need to do. And that could really help a lot.
Yeah, agreed. I love that. And I'm a huge list person. Like literally, like this desk is covered in lists right now. I won't even torture you with it. But I feel like having a list that is almost like I need to check in on it. Like I have all these lists of things I want to do, but I don't think I've done a good job of putting dates to them or goals to them or kind of check-ins. And I think that would be really, really helpful.
That's a big part of how I developed my workbook is because I like lists and I like to have everything written out so that it's really clear. I kind of had to break everything down and then look at it as a big picture. Yeah. And that's the way I do for my my quarterly goals. And I mean, all that stuff. I've got a bullet journal and I list everything out. And then I have a huge piece of paper on the wall that I pin up and it has everything listed out for the month. Like how many clients I have, how many people I'm closing out for the month, and all of those kind of things. And it just is a good way to keep me in check every day.
Yeah.
Accountability.
Yes, I love that. And we've taught working from home is a very different experience. So when we lived in DC, I worked at the corporate office for my company. And when we moved, my husband got a job offer in Charlotte and I was like, hey, we have to move. And they were like, well, why don't you just work from there? So it's been a huge going from an awesome, cool culture office to me working by myself in my office with my dogs. It's very different. So then now trying to add in early morning, lunchtime, evening time check-ins for myself. Accountability is very different when you're by yourself. So I think that is just a huge thing, huge helping factor to try to figure out what works best for me and how I keep things accountable. I think will be huge once I figure that out perfectly.
I mean, working from home is great, but it is really different and there is a big learning curve. So you've already, just mastering that's a huge thing, a huge hurdle that you've already crossed.
Yeah.
So learning how to work and the accountability and how you do all those things, that's huge. You've already done one huge chunk of it. So
yeah, that's awesome. I have so many scribbles. I'm gonna have to go back and put into better form. But this is awesome. So you said you worked a lot with restaurants, and do you feel like there's specific businesses that you've worked with, or do you offer to everybody? Is there anything that you have found helpful in I guess, so I've niched. I've found a very specific thing and don't know if that's going to work for me. I hope so. But do you feel in your experience, that's been a good thing, bad thing? Do you have any viewpoint on that?
I do. I mean, I think it's a good thing because when you have decided the people that you work with and you know that ideal client backwards and forwards, then you can speak
Mm-hmm.
directly to them and it makes marketing, finding them so much easier.
Yeah.
So much easier. Um, Kind of just some tips about restaurant stuff is if you could you need to find, I mean, since you're doing restaurants, then it makes it easier for you to know where to find them. But I would
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and start looking around for groups that you could get involved in where they're going to be those people that are
Mm-hmm.
there because it's a lot harder to get somebody to rebrand than it is to get in on when somebody's actually branding.
Yeah.
Trying to think, let's see, there are like your restaurant is family owned, but then there's other groups that'll have, maybe it could be a group that maybe just has like 4 or 5 restaurants, or
Mm-hmm.
they're going to expand and have more restaurants, and so they would have more needs like social media and
Mm-hmm.
lots more of graphics that they would need, stuff like that. So if you can start networking now and getting out there and trying to meet people before they go to an agency. That's the thing, is you have to get them before
Before.
they go to an agency.
Yeah. And being so new to this area specifically, I am trying to figure out like these people that have the idea, they need to find someone to find the space. They need like who are those people and who are they going to? I haven't figured it out yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm working on it. Kind of what their first step is. And I've really, so my site right now is just a survey. Because I really, this first part, while I figure out all the rest of it, I really wanted to reach out to ideal clients, even if they're established already, just like in my head who those people are, and just learn from them and figure out like offerings, what specifically they would want or need, or I might have an idea about how that would be helpful, but maybe in reality it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So had a few people take it, not as many as I'd like yet, but my hope for that is to figure out like how they started, because I've never made a business myself. So or a restaurant or retail myself. So, at what point are they finding design? At what point are they starting the process? So again, I don't know it yet, but I know that that's a huge part of it. And being new to an area, there's still a lot of groups I'm trying to seek out, and just business groups and all kinds of stuff. So I think that's great advice. Just finding it.
The restaurants that I've worked with, it came about from my husband, so it was through that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot about kind of how they work from just the people that we've met and the things like that. You can actually see online where people apply for a business license,
Oh, interesting.
and that could be a really good way for you to get
Yeah.
leads. I think that joining like young entrepreneurs is good.
Mm-hmm.
You also want to check in with your local chamber of commerce, and I've been on the board of a chamber of commerce in a place that we used to live, and they kind of vary as far as like what they offer and how integrated they are with the community.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a lot of other organizations that offer nothing but free business advice. And some of them are national, and some of them are going to be just specific to where you live. So you
Mm-hmm.
could just try to do a little research. The chamber could be a really good place for you to start, to
I
try to
love that.
see what groups. Like we have a bunch that are here we have a entrepreneurial center that's just for entrepreneurs, and they have a lot of things that you can do. They have something called Intro Knoxville that's through the chamber here, and it's a class that you take that just introduces you to a new city.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so just take some time and kind of see what all is in Charlotte. Um, the retail people that I've worked with has come about. I've gotten the chance to do some web design and some rebranding, but it didn't start that way. So sometimes what you get in the door with, it's really just getting in the door. I mean, you
Yeah.
can open up a lot of opportunities. So you may feel like you have to lead with your top service, but
Mm-hmm.
what you can really do is get in with a small service and then expand on
Mm-hmm.
that. So that's kind of something to keep in mind.
I love that.
Especially if you find somebody that's growing, because they're going to have just additional needs. Like, you think
Mm-hmm.
about the initial branding, the logo and stuff, the menu, and those are the bigger items, but they can have some growing items, which may come in the form of social media, but it can come in different things. So there may be a market for just establishing yourself as the go-to person for restaurant things, and you may be able to start getting those bigger fish with those smaller packages first.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that could
I
be
love
something that you could try.
I love that. And one of the sectors of retail to me is makers. And like you talked about, there's so many people out there who are so passionate about their craft, and maybe they've done it for a while and they're ready to get it into retail. That involves packaging, and my day job is in a lot of packaging. So like there's things I know and that I could help them with. So I feel like that might also be a first step for a lot of things, because once you design the packaging for something that's in retail, that could then lead to helping the retail store that's holding it, like not necessarily direct connection, but could help tie things in. So I think that's great. Um, I love it. Writing again. Yeah, this is so great. I'm super excited. And I love talking about it. It's so fun to like talk to an outsider that is not in my house with me.
Well,
Um,
I love hearing about it, so this is really fun for me. But those are the ideas that I can think of so far. But
yeah,
I'll send you a follow up email that kind of outlines some things that we talked about, because I know we talked about a lot.
yes, we did, and thank you.
You're so
I can't.
welcome.
This has been awesome. I think you're doing amazing things, and have already been so helpful. So I'll keep you posted for sure with
Yes.
where I'm going and where this little side business goes. And again, if there's ever anything you need from me, definitely let me know.
Well, do you already have your Instagram up for the business now?
I do.
Okay, what
It
is it?
is at letter T, Creating Co. And then the website is tatkacreating.com, Tatka. My name is a mouthful. So, but yeah, it's up. The Instagram is up. I jumped right in and then realized like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying me. So then I really backed off until I can really offer what I think is more of who I am. I think it's very real, but I felt like I needed to kind of reassess. And some of this stuff we talked about, I'm actually excited to figure out how to post. So that's already a step in the right direction.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, I found you on Instagram, so it's obviously an amazing platform, and I've loved reaching out and connecting with people. It's so valuable. So again, thank you.
You are welcome. And I love talking to you today, and I can't wait to follow up and see what awesome things you're going to do.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Okay, great, Taylyn. Have a good day.
Have